On neuroscience and intelligence, researchers agree that intelligence is distributed widely across the brain regions, and it depends on the connectivity and coordination among the different areas of the brain. You have these different areas of the brain. The better and faster that they can communicate, that is going to correlate very highly with intelligence. Recent work suggests as much as 80% of variance in general intelligence can be explained just by processing speed. Figure 3 talks about intelligence in the brain. They show actually a picture from an earlier chapter. And again, that it is linked, intelligence is linked to the ability to these areas of the brain to be able to communicate well with each other. So the idea that maybe that you have your IQ just in one specific part of the brain, that's probably not accurate. At this point in the text, they also talk about nature-nurture debate for intelligence, essentially. And researchers agree that it's both hereditary and the environment that influence intelligence. Using genome-wide association studies, researchers have found that there are thousands of genetic sequences that contribute to intelligence. So again, like, it's not just one specific part of the brain. It's also not just one or two genes. It's the interaction between thousands of different components. And both twin studies and adoption studies have been used to analyze the importance of hereditary. You do have a figure for this. Figure 4, the correlation between intelligence scores and twin status. So for identical twins, there's a pretty high correlation between their intelligence. And for fraternal twins, it's quite a bit less, but it's still a fairly high correlation. But again, it is less. Also related to this is the idea of the Flynn Effect, which it's an interesting concept. The idea that there's been a worldwide increase in scores over a relatively short period of time. And this increase may be due to the vastly greater access to information, better schools, essentially. Another big factor that we talked about quite a while back now, it seems like, the idea of prenatal and postnatal nutrition is probably going to be related to this. And there is a figure for this. Figure 5, the increases in IQ scores from 1932 to 1997. And so you can see that standard distribution has scooted over some. There are some issues with intelligence tests, and one of these is going to be cultural bias. Intelligence tests favor people from urban environments, middle socioeconomic status, and white rather than African American ethnicity. And those that do not speak standard English are obviously going to be at a disadvantage because the test is written in English. And so what researchers have tried to do is create what they call cultural fair tests. They can't be cultural free tests because you can't ever extract all of the culture from a test, but they do try to make them more culturally fair. So the questions are familiar to people from all socioeconomic and ethnic backgrounds. And then sometimes intelligence tests are used to compare one demographic group to another, which again, if there's a cultural bias there, that's not going to be a fair analysis. And so some groups are going to be favored on these tests compared to others. A couple of examples the book lists is when males outperform females on math tests, or when European Americans outperform African Americans. And one potential issue in doing these types of tests is the idea of stereotype threat. So if you take social psychology, you probably learn a little bit more about this. The anxiety that one's behavior might conform to a negative stereotype about that group. So, for example, going back to the idea that men outperform women on math tests. If women go into the tests and they are made to think about their gender, and they're made to think about this idea of that women aren't as good at math, and then when they take the tests, they conform to that negative stereotype. It is a theory out there, and there are definitely a lot of research studies that have been conducted in this area called stereotype threat. So if you're interested in that, you could look it up. Okay, in the next set of slides, we'll talk about the development of intelligence.